There comes a moment in life when everything feels strangely unfamiliar. The people, the ambitions, the routines that once made sense suddenly lose their meaning. You stand in the middle of what seems like chaos, feeling lost, detached, unsure of where to go next. But as Alan Watts would say, that sense of being lost is not the end. It's the beginning. It's not confusion you're experiencing. It's awakening. The self you've built through years of conditioning is dissolving, and what's emerging is something deeper, infinitely more real. You see, we've been taught since childhood to chase definitions of success that aren't truly ours. To be someone, to become something, to reach somewhere. Yet the more we try to become, the further we drift from simply being. Watts reminds us that the wave doesn't need to struggle to be the ocean. It already is. So when you feel lost, it's not because you've gone off the path. It's because the path you were following was never yours to begin with. The illusion is breaking, and that's what awakening feels like: disorienting, raw, and profoundly liberating. This moment of inner chaos is sacred. It's the space between who you were told to be and who you actually are. The ego fights because it fears the silence that comes after its story's end. But within that silence, something extraordinary happens. You begin to hear your own truth. The universe, no longer filtered by the noise of ambition or fear, starts whispering through the stillness. What's often said that when you realize there's no separate you, apart from everything else, you stop struggling and start flowing. That's when the awakening begins, not as a goal to reach, but as a realization of what has always been. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean at dawn. For a moment, you can't tell where the sea ends and the sky begins. That's what awakening feels like, an endless merging with something greater than yourself. You're not the roles you play, not the thoughts you think, not the fears you hold. You are the awareness behind all of it. The same awareness that moves the stars, that breathes through trees, that dances in the rhythm of life itself. When you finally see this, the question, "Who am I?" dissolves because the answer was never meant to be spoken. It was meant to be felt. So no, you're not lost. You're just remembering. You're shedding layers of illusion, breaking through the noise, and awakening to the truth that you were never separate, never broken, never behind. This is the beauty of being alive, the sacred process of coming home to yourself. And once you glimpse that, once you truly see it, there's no going back. Because now, you're not wandering, you're awakening. We live in a world obsessed with direction. From the moment we're old enough to speak, we're asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" As if life were a straight line, as if every step were a means to some final destination. But Alan Watts reminds us that life isn't a journey from point A to point B. It's a dance, a song, a spontaneous movement of existence expressing itself. To feel lost, then, is to forget that the dance has no destination. It only has rhythm. The anxiety of not knowing where you're going is born from the illusion that there's somewhere you must arrive. Yet the truth is simpler, almost disarming. You're already here. When you believe you're lost, you begin to resist the present moment. You fight against what is, and in doing so, you create tension within yourself. You think you need to fix, to plan, to become, but Watts would say that the harder you try to grasp the river, the faster it slips through your fingers. The current of life doesn't need control. It needs surrender. The idea of being lost exists only in the mind, a projection of what should be versus what is. The moment you stop comparing your reality to your expectations, the illusion of being lost starts to dissolve. The ego, however, thrives on the idea of separation. It whispers that you're behind, that others have figured out, that you must catch up. But Watts reminds us, the ego is just a social mask, a costume you mistake for your skin. You wear it so long that you forget who you are beneath it. When the mask begins to crack, it feels terrifying. You mistake it for disorientation, for loss. Yet that's not loss. That's the truth breaking through. It's your soul reminding you that you were never just a mask. You were the actor behind it all along. It's in this exact moment, when everything feels uncertain, that awakening begins. The universe shakes you, not to punish you, but to wake you up. The job that no longer fulfills you, the relationships that suddenly feel empty, the goals that once drove you, but now mean nothing. All of these are signals. They're life's way of saying, stop searching out there. Look in here. You're not being abandoned by life. You're being redirected toward your own essence. The chaos you feel is the friction of transformation. So the next time you feel lost, pause. Breathe. Remember that the universe isn't punishing you. It's inviting you. The discomfort, the confusion, the silence, these are not voids to escape, but thresholds to cross. You are not falling apart. You're falling into place. The illusion of being lost only exists because you started to wake up to something greater, the realization that you were never meant to find your way, only to become aware of where you already are. One of Alan Watts' most profound teachings is that control is the root of suffering. We cling to identities, relationships, beliefs, and plans as if they could guarantee safety. But life, by its nature, is fluid. The more we try to solidify it, the more it slips away. What's used to say that trying to control life is like trying to hold your breath. You can only do it for so long before you suffocate. The beauty of life reveals itself not through control, but through release. To awaken, you must learn to let go, not as an act of defeat, but as an act of trust. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to the rhythm, to the unfolding, to the mystery. When you stop demanding certainty, you start noticing wonder. You see beauty in impermanence, wisdom in endings, and meaning in chaos. Watts believed that freedom is found not in mastering life, but in dancing with it. When you finally stop forcing outcomes, you realize that everything is already flowing toward where it's meant to be. The current carries you, not away from yourself, but home to yourself. The reason letting go feels painful is because we've been taught to equate identity with possession. My job, my body, my reputation, my story. But none of these are truly yours. They're temporary expressions, waves on the surface of a vast ocean. When one wave ends, another begins. Watts often compared this to music. The pauses between notes are just as vital as the notes themselves. The silence, the space, the endings, they give shape to the song. So too does letting go give meaning to life. When you release what no longer serves you, you create space for something deeper to emerge. It's in this emptiness that clarity is born. The mind quiets, the heart opens, and for the first time, you feel an unshakable peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. The paradox of letting go is that you gain everything by surrendering everything. You stop chasing happiness and start being it. So let go. Let the plans dissolve. Let the identities crumble. Let the noise fade. You don't lose yourself in the process. You find a self that was never dependent on anything external. The self that exists beyond fear, beyond control, beyond the illusion of time. As Watts would say, when you let go of the rope you've been pulling against the universe, you realize the universe was never against you. It was carrying you all along. The moment you begin to awaken, it's not what most people imagine. It isn't peace at first. It's disorientation. It's like realizing that the walls of a house you've lived in your entire life were never real. They were painted shadows on air. Alan Watts often spoke about this paradox. To awaken is to lose everything that was false before you can see what is true. The ego calls it a crisis, but the soul calls it rebirth. You begin to feel that life is happening through you rather than to you. And that shift, subtle yet immense, changes everything. In the beginning, awakening feels like chaos because your mind has lost its grip on what once felt certain. You question everything, your purpose, your beliefs, even your own identity. But that questioning is sacred. It's the fire that burns away illusion. Watts compared it to peeling an onion. Each layer you remove brings tears, but beneath every tear lies another layer of truth. The pain you feel is not punishment. It's purification. You're being emptied so you can finally see what was always there. Most people fear this stage and try to return to sleep, to go back to routines, to comfort, to distraction. But the universe doesn't let you unknow what you've seen. Once the curtain is pulled, you can't pretend the stage is the world anymore. Watts would say that awakening is like realizing you're both the actor and the audience, both the wave and the ocean. There's no separation, only the illusion of it. The you, who seeks enlightenment, and the you, who feels lost are the same consciousness playing different roles in the same divine drama. And yet, as frightening as it feels, this awakening is the most natural thing in existence. It's not something you do. It's something that happens when you stop pretending. Just as the seed doesn't strain to become a tree, your awakening unfolds the moment you stop resisting. You realize that growth doesn't mean adding more. It means shedding what isn't real. The paradox is that in losing yourself, you finally find yourself. You were never lost. You were just dreaming you were separate. So when the world feels uncertain, when your identity feels like it's falling apart, take heart. That's not the end of your story. It's the moment the real one begins. The paradox of awakening is that you lose everything you thought you were, only to discover that you are everything. You are the ocean that became a wave, forgetting for a moment that it was never apart from the sea. And now, as you wake, you remember, not with the mind, but with the soul. Alan Watts often said that we suffer not because life is chaotic, but because we believe it should be otherwise. We imagine that if we could only manage our circumstances, we would find peace. But the truth is, control is the greatest illusion of all. You can plan, calculate, and worry endlessly, but life moves to its own rhythm, not yours. The trees don't control the wind, yet they dance perfectly with it. The river doesn't demand direction, yet it always finds the sea. In trying to dominate life, we miss its wisdom. We spend so much of our energy trying to secure what was never meant to be held. Relationships, outcomes, even time itself. What's compared this to trying to trap water in a net? The tighter you weave the mesh, the faster it escapes. The more control you seek, the more life slips away. Freedom doesn't come from mastery over circumstances. It comes from harmony with them. True peace is not the absence of change. It's the ability to float within it. Letting go of control requires trust. And trust is born from remembering that you and life are not two separate forces. You are not a puppet being moved by fate. You are the movement itself. The same intelligence that spins galaxies breathes through you. When you recognize that, you stop fighting the current. You realize that the unfolding of your life, even in its uncertainty, is not chaos but choreography. Watts said it best: you are a function of what the whole universe is doing, in the same way that a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing. When you truly see this, control no longer feels necessary, because you finally understand you are never outside the flow. The tension dissolves, the anxiety fades, and what remains is awareness. Pure, effortless awareness. Life becomes lighter, more fluid, even playful. You begin to move not from fear, but from spontaneity, responding to life instead of resisting it. That's what it means to live freely, to act without grasping, to love without owning, to walk without needing to arrive. So perhaps the question was never how do I control life, but can I allow life to move through me? When you surrender that last illusion, that you must be in charge, you return to the rhythm that was guiding you all along. And in that surrender, you discover the quiet truth Watts spent his life pointing toward, that the universe was never against you, because you are the universe, looking back at itself through human eyes. As you move deeper into awakening, the ego does not vanish quietly. It disguises itself in new forms, subtler, more deceptive. It says, now that I am spiritual, I am better than who I was before. Or worse, I am closer to enlightenment than others. Alan Watts warned that this is the ego's final trick, to use even the idea of awakening as another mask to wear. It will transform humility into pride, surrender into identity. The spiritual ego is far more cunning than the ordinary one because it pretends to have died while still pulling every string behind the curtain. The mind, desperate for control, wants awakening to be an achievement. It wants a certificate, a conclusion, a destination. But enlightenment isn't something you win. It's something you remember. It's not a state to reach, but the collapse of all reaching. Watts often laughed at the seriousness with which seekers pursued enlightenment. He would say, you can't get there, because you are there. The pursuit of awakening only reinforces the illusion that you are separate from it. You don't attain the truth. You awaken to the fact that you are never apart from it. In this stage, The ego often masquerades as the voice of wisdom. It begins to speak in spiritual language, using words like energy, frequency, or manifestation. Yet beneath them lies the same hunger for superiority, the same fear of insignificance. The trick is not to destroy the ego, but to see through it. Watts compared it to looking at a mirror and realizing that the reflection was never the one watching. Once you see the ego for what it is, a role, a ripple, a passing wave, it loses its power to dominate your experience. But this realization doesn't come through discipline or control. It comes through awareness. You observe the ego, you feel its patterns, you watch its games, and you don't fight it. You let it unfold like a movie, knowing that the screen remains untouched by whatever story plays upon it. The more you try to destroy the ego, the more it hides behind your effort. Yet when you simply watch it, without judgment or attachment, it dissolves on its own, like mist in morning light. And in that quiet aftermath, something extraordinary happens. You no longer take yourself so seriously. You laugh, not at others, but at your own cosmic drama. You see that life was never meant to be conquered. It was meant to be enjoyed. The ego is not your enemy. It was your teacher, showing you what you are not, so you could finally remember what you are. And when that truth dawns, you stop trying to awaken, because you realize you already are. There comes a moment, after all the searching and surrendering, when words begin to lose their meaning. The mind, once obsessed with answers, falls silent. This silence isn't empty. It's alive, vibrant, vast, eternal. Alan Watts often described it as the still point between breaths, the quiet awareness beneath the chatter of thought. In that stillness, you realize something profound. You are not the voice inside your head. You are the space in which that voice arises. You are the silence listening to the noise. The human mind is a magnificent tool, but a terrible master. It constantly divides reality, labeling, judging, comparing, never allowing you to see the whole. Watts used to say, the menu is not the meal. Thoughts about life are not life itself. The concept of awakening is not awakening. When you're trapped in thought, you're eating the menu, analyzing, dissecting, but never tasting the richness of what is. Only when the mind quiets can you truly experience existence, raw, immediate, sacred. This stillness cannot be forced. It reveals itself when you stop striving. Meditation, prayer, or even simply watching the rain. These are not techniques to reach peace, but invitations to notice that peace was always there. You begin to see that thoughts are like clouds passing through an infinite sky. They come, they go, but they never touch the sky itself. And that sky, vast, open, unchanging, is what you truly are. The mind moves within it, but it does not define it. In that awareness, life begins to unfold differently. Time slows down. Ordinary moments, the wind through trees, the hum of distant traffic, the flicker of a candle, take on a sacred quality. You realize that enlightenment isn't hidden in temples or scriptures, but in the simplicity of now. The present moment is the only gateway there ever was. And as Watts would often say, if you say that getting there is better than being here, you will never be here. The miracle was never in the future. It's in the awareness of this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. And so, in that stillness beyond thought, you finally meet yourself. Not the self that strives or compares, but the one that simply is. You realize that awakening was never a journey outward, but a return inward, a remembering of the silence that has always been watching, always waiting, always whole. The mind bows, the noise fades, and what remains is presence, vast, timeless, and free. When Alan Watts spoke about awakening, he didn't describe it as an escape from life. He described it as a dance within it. Once you begin to awaken, you realize that existence isn't a problem to be solved. It's a play to be experienced. The universe, he said, is not a machine with a purpose, but a musical thing, and you are one of its notes, vibrating perfectly in tune with the whole. Every joy, every pain, every rise and fall, it's all part of the same cosmic rhythm. Once you see this, you stop taking life so gravely. You begin to laugh, not because life is meaningless, but because it's too beautiful to be contained by meaning alone. The tragedy and comedy of life merge into one vast performance. The roles you play, the friend, the parent, the dreamer, the seeker, are no longer burdens, but expressions of the universe experiencing itself through you. What's love to say that we're the aperture through which the universe looks at itself? That means your life, in all its chaos and color, is not separate from the divine. It is the divine, dressed in the costume of individuality. The wave does not need to prove it's part of the ocean. It already is, by its very nature. When you see life as a play, suffering begins to transform. Pain no longer feels like punishment, but part of the melody. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to wonder, "What is life showing me through this?" You realize that light and shadow are not enemies, but partners. That without darkness, the stars would never be seen. The play of existence includes both, perfectly intertwined, perfectly balanced. And in that realization, even sorrow becomes sacred. This doesn't mean you detach from life or deny its pain. It means you engage with it fully, knowing that it's all temporary, yet all divine. You can cry deeply and laugh freely in the same day, because you no longer cling to either. What's would say, to love God, you must love the devil too. He meant that to embrace the totality of existence, you must stop dividing it into what you think is good or bad. Life is not a moral equation. It's an unfolding mystery. Once you stop judging it, you start dancing with it. And so, awakening is not about transcending the world, but realizing that you are never outside it. You are the music playing itself. You are the cosmic laughter echoing through eternity. When you see this, fear loses its grip. Every moment becomes theater, and every breath becomes art. You understand that you don't have to fix life. You only have to live it, consciously, playfully, awake. After all the searching, all the letting go, all the falling apart, something gentle begins to happen. You stop trying to awaken, and in that surrender, awakening deepens on its own. What once felt like a journey now feels like a return. Alan Watts often compared enlightenment to remembering a song you've always known but had forgotten how to hum. It's not about becoming something new. It's about remembering what you have always been, awareness itself, timeless and whole. You start to see that the one who was seeking truth was never separate from the truth being sought. The one who longed for peace was never apart from peace itself. It's as if the universe played a game of hide and seek, pretending to be lost so that it could know the joy of being found. And when that realization dawns, there is no explosion, no grand revelation, only a deep, quiet knowing, a warmth that fills your chest, as if existence is whispering, "You're home now." The world doesn't suddenly change, but your perception of it does. The noise, the chaos, the uncertainty, they still exist, but they no longer control you. You move through life with ease, responding instead of reacting. You begin to see others not as strangers, but as reflections of yourself wearing different faces. Compassion blooms naturally, not as an effort, but as a recognition. For how can you hate or harm what is, in essence, another form of you? This is the point where the seeker becomes the witness. You live, you love, you lose, but beneath it all, there is a still, unshakable peace. The peace of knowing that you are never truly lost. Watts would smile and remind us, you are the universe experiencing itself for a little while. And in that realization, every ordinary moment becomes sacred. Every laugh, every tear, every breath becomes a prayer of gratitude for being here, now, awake. And as this awareness settles, the great paradox reveals itself one last time. That the journey you thought was about finding something was actually about realizing there was never anything to find. You were never separate. You were never broken. You were never behind. You were simply asleep in the arms of eternity, and now you are awake. Not to something new, but to everything that has always been. You're not lost. You're home. There comes a moment, after all the searching, the surrendering, and the silent realizations, when you finally understand there was never a destination waiting for you. Life itself was the destination all along. Everything you resisted, every loss, every uncertainty, was not chaos working against you, but wisdom guiding you back to yourself. Alan once reminded us that the meaning of life is just to be alive. And in this realization, the struggle dissolves. You no longer chase the horizon. You become the horizon. You stop running toward purpose and start living as purpose. Every experience you thought was breaking you was, in truth, reshaping you, molding you into the awareness that could finally see. The feeling of being lost was never a mistake. It was the call of awakening disguised as confusion. Each detour, each heartbreak, each ending, they were the universe whispering, "Wake up. Wake up to who you truly are, to the boundless consciousness behind your name, your story, your fears." You were never meant to find yourself, because you were never missing. You were only dreaming you were small. As this awakening deepens, the ordinary becomes divine. The sound of rain, the laughter of strangers, the warmth of sunlight, they no longer pass unnoticed. They become sacred reminders that you belong here, in this moment, as you are. What's said that when you see yourself in everything, compassion flows naturally. You stop trying to control the rhythm and begin to dance with it. You no longer cling to outcomes because you trust the music, even when you can't hear where it's leading next. And perhaps that's the final gift of awakening. Not an escape from life, but a deeper immersion into it. You realize that the point of the game was never to win, but to play consciously. You were never an isolated being wandering through a meaningless world. You were the universe expressing itself as you, exploring itself through laughter, through struggle, through love. You are not a fragment of existence. You are its living pulse. And the moment you see that, you can finally rest. You can finally breathe. You can finally be. So, as you sit with these words, let them echo softly within you. Maybe this video found you at the exact moment you needed to remember. You are not lost. You are waking up. If this message resonated with your heart, allow it to ripple outward. Share it with someone who might be searching for the same truth. Subscribe, leave your reflection below, and let this space become a community of souls remembering together. Because every time you awaken to who you really are, the whole universe awakens with you.